Hare Krishna, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at the third mantra of the Sri Isopanisad. This means that this is the fourth installment of my Sri Isopanisad series. Hope that you guys are enjoying it. Make sure you start at the first one if you haven't yet, and work your way through in order. Um, I've been enjoying diving into this and reading your questions and getting emails from people. It's been really neat. So thank you all for that. And remember, anytime you have questions about this, you can always email me, info@nightlightastrology.com. So just a refresher, the Sri Isopanisad is one of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the ancient philosophical summaries and commentaries on the Vedas. We've been working our way through the Sri Isopanisad, which is called the Upanishad of the Lord. Isha means Lord. It was written in poetic verse. It has 18 verses. We're on the third verse today, plus the invocation, which is its own verse or mantra. And we've been working our way through in order. So let's take a look at today's verse, which is the third mantra of the Sri Isopanisad. Here's what it says. The killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. Let's read it one more time. The killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. So this third mantra is one of the heavier mantras of the Sri Isopanisad, in my opinion, and but it's really rich and has some really important takeaways for us as we're on the path of Bhakti Yoga. We're studying Bhakti Yoga. Here is the commentary from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who was the monk who brought Krishna Bhakti Yoga to the West in the 1960s, started the Hare Krishna movement. You can see this is his copy of the Sri Isopanisad, which you can get on Amazon. Here's his purport, part of his purport from this verse. He said, intelligent human beings must always remember that this particular form of body is obtained after an evolution of many millions of years of transmigration of the soul. This material world is sometimes compared with an ocean, and this human body is compared with a solid boat designed to cross over the ocean. The Vedic scriptures and the acharyas, or saintly teachers, are compared with the expert boatmen, and the facilities of a human body are compared with favorable breezes, which can help the boat smoothly ply to the desired destination. If with all these facilities a person does not fully utilize his human life for self-realization, such an asura must be considered atmahana, a killer of the soul. Now, asura is the word for demonic, or one who has a demonic mentality or something like that. And demonic is basically defined as anything that is willfully ignorant of or defiant of one's soul and of God or one's source. And so let's read this one more time, though, because it's really important. Intelligent human beings must always remember that this particular form of body is obtained after an evolution of many millions of years of transmigration of the soul. In other words, the human form of life, from an evolutionary standpoint, to arrive in the great chain of reincarnation, of transmigration of the soul, is very rare. Even the Dalai Lama, who is part of the Buddhist faith, you could say, has said this, that obtaining a human form of life is exceedingly rare and precious. Most Eastern philosophical traditions believe this. This material world is sometimes compared with an ocean, and this human body is compared with a solid boat designed to cross over the ocean. Well, why? The main reason that this human vehicle is so desirable is because this human vehicle provides us with the opportunity to inquire, to chant, to reflect upon the nature of self, soul, reality, God, others. The human form of consciousness is incredibly unique in this regard and represents the potential of an evolutionary stepping stone. And so for that reason, it's thought of in traditions, both, again, yoga traditions and Buddhist traditions and so forth, as incredibly sacred and rare. And so we can't squander it. We can't waste it doing things that have nothing to do with spiritual life. He says the Vedic scriptures, this would be one of them, as well as saintly teachers, people who have followed this path and set out the road before us, are compared with the expert boatmen, and the facilities of a human body, the mind especially, and so forth, are compared with favorable breezes, which can help the boat smoothly ply to the desired destination. The desired destination, of course, being release from the cycle of birth and death. If with all these facilities a person does not fully utilize his human life for self-realization, such an asura must be considered atmahana, a killer of the soul. Now, the soul can't actually perish. It can't actually die because it was never actually born. And this is spelled out in other places. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains this, and in many other places. So in a sense, we're not talking about something, the soul can't actually be killed in a sense, but we are talking about someone who degrades the soul, defiles the soul, casts it down, makes it ignorant, and places it in repeated cycles of birth, death, and misery. And so this verse is really telling us, okay, uh, let's get real here. The human form of life is precious, and we can't squander it. That's the underlying meaning of this mantra, you could say. And that's why, Srila Prabhupada comments on it so overtly. The killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. Well, what is darkness and ignorance? You could say it's evil, or it's pain, or it's suffering, or it's misery. But ignorance and darkness also means we go to places, worlds, even within this world, when we are not practicing spiritual life and turning our attention to the soul and to God, that we naturally start to put ourselves into the association with lower energies, lower forms of consciousness, you might say, all of which ultimately are loved and led by God, all of which are sacred and beautiful in a sense. But we also can't deny that there are hellish realms, and we descend into ignorance and darkness when we ignore the soul and its relationship to Krishna. So in this sense, ignorance also means complete lack of awareness of who we are as spiritual beings, or a complete ignoring of ignorance, or a complete lack of awareness that God exists, or that we are eternal spirit souls. We become so deeply absorbed in matter that we think only what's right in front of me, including my own body, that's only what's real. So and that is death to the soul, right? Because the soul is so much more. The soul is multidimensional, eternal, full of knowledge, bliss, and eternity, right? So anyway, the gift of a human life is rare and precious. And so this verse is, underlying meaning of the verse is that this life is not meant to be used for self-gratification or for sense gratification, which are exchangeable concepts, but rather this lifetime in this body is meant for inquiring into the nature of self and of God, of who we really are and where we really come from. Saintly people, practices, and teachings help us to use this form of life to evolve spiritually. And that's the real point of life. If we don't do this, if we don't take this task seriously, we tend to continually sink into realms and incarnations of darkness or ignorance, which could be pain and suffering, or just pure ignorance, meaning we're just not aware of who we really are and what's really real. Both of which are painful, but one may feel a little bit more punitive and the other a little bit more natural. For example, on the natural side of things, if I just ignore that I'm a soul and ignore that God is real, it's like, it's like I'm just going to wander through experiences that exist without the light and source of healing, beauty, and divinity that, really makes anything worthwhile. And eventually, walking alone like that, without awareness of who I am or where I come from, there will be pain and there will be misery. But in a sense, the natural result of turning off the light is we walk in darkness. On the other hand, we also descend into realms, you might say, of evil. Evil meaning where we are more reckless, self-destructive, or we have to face consequences because of our choices to ignore who we are and where we come from that entail heavier events and experiences. And that is karma. That's what the karmic laws of the universe do in order to help us grow and learn. You're not alone, and this is who you really are. So this verse is a warning as well as a reminder of how precious and sacred life is. Bhagavad Gita puts it like this: as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. And similarly, the Srimad Bhagavatam says, after many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life, as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. Now, what that means, and this verse is really beautiful. One of the things that I'll say a few things about this, but first of all, it reemphasizes again how precious and rare this life is, and to make sure that we use it to further the life of the soul and its divine awakening, as opposed to going to sleep, which is a tantamount to killing the soul. Even though the soul can't die, it's tantamount to harming the soul. Thus, a sober person, someone who sees things as they are, that's what we mean by sober. And also part of why in Bhakti Yoga we emphasize a life of sobriety. We don't drink or try to, get out of the present situation, which can drive us more into darkness. We try to stay sober and level-headed about what's real. And that's how we stay in touch with who we are too, which is self-effulgent and luminous and containing all happiness, right here and right now. So as long as we haven't fallen down, we should use the human body to perfect our lives. And perfection, for some people, you'll hear that word and you'll think, I just get so tired of the effort. And I'm with you, because Bhakti Yoga is not about effort in the sense of like, I'm trying to become the perfect person. When we say try to perfect your life, what we mean is try to use it in the best way possible. And perfect is like a poetic embellishment in some ways, because by perfection, of course, throughout the Bhakti scriptures, the path of perfection is defined by one's ability to surrender, to give up on trying to be anything other than what we are, and to instead love and serve God and love and serve others. But that when we do that, that is the perfect use of our life. It comes not by effort and achieving some level 10, but by just continually doing the best we can to surrender. But that's what we should be using our life for, because that's how we start reaching our true form and awakening ourselves from material slumber. So after all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life. So you think about species of life that are just, carnivorous or murderous, or just, what I mean? Just like, and every animal and every species is also talked about throughout the scriptures as beautiful and divine. And yet it's very clear that there are some species of life where you're like, the struggle for existence, or the tooth and nail, or the kind of carnivorousness of it, that we have to recognize that, what's common, right? What's common is to eat, mate, sleep, defend, try to satisfy the senses, very basic things that all animals do. But what's so unique about the human form of life is that we have facility, unlike so many species. And who knows how many others there are out there that have even more facility than we do, perhaps. But we have this special ability to reflect upon God and reflect upon soul, and to find that source of happiness within ourselves, to link ourselves to it in love and in devotion. And that's only possible for people who have a certain kind of consciousness. And so it really can't be wasted. And we see this again and again and again all throughout the scriptures. So I've taken some breaks from this series. I hope that you are enjoying it. I would love, as I take breaks, what I'm trying to do is fill in with other material. Some people may not be as interested in going through a deep study of an Upanishad, right? So I am trying to pace this by adding in some other content. One of the things that I'll be doing pretty soon is a series of easy practices of surrender. And this is going to be more practical. Well, what can I actually do to surrender and start practicing Bhakti Yoga? So we'll come back with the next mantra, with mantra 4 shortly. I'd love to hear your comments and questions if you have them in the comments section, or again, always email me at info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, take it easy, everyone. Hare Krishna.